I said, President, maybe you're going to have to keep fighting and suffering a lot because both sides are suffering before you pull them apart, before they're able to be pulled apart. But it's a pretty known analogy. You have two kids, they fight. Sometimes you let them fight for a little while. You see it in hockey. You see it in sports. The referees let them go for a couple of seconds, let them go for a little while before you pull them apart. And maybe, and I said it, and maybe that's a negative because we're saying go, but a lot of bad blood. There's some bad blood between the two. I have to deal with it, and the chancellor has to deal with it. It's incredible. The level of, there's a great hatred between those two men.
Yeah, a lot of hatred there, a lot of fight. Listen, just so a lot of you know, we thought we were going to have Che Bose on today, but he was unable to be. He had to got pulled away on another assignment. Unfortunately, we'll have him back as soon as we can because, man, it would have been great. He had some great things to add in, which we'll discuss some of which here later. But probably better for some of you, we have Gary Villapiano back with us today on the screen instead of just hiding behind it like he does, like the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, I don't hide, but I'm glad to be
all right,
here.
poor choice of words. You're doing the other job that we all desperately need, but too many people keep asking for you anyway. So good to have you back on the screen today.
Everybody knows they don't need to hide from you.
Yeah, and then of course, as everybody also knows, it's a great teamwork that we have together here, and so I'm glad to have it on. But I especially was glad to have you on today because you got some good insights onto some of this stuff and some good analogies to draw. But we're focused on what into this episode today. What is the Trump administration going to actually do? We've been talking about how since April 18th, they want what seemed to be a really big change, that we're days away, as Secretary Rubio said, from walking if we don't get the sides together. And that kept turning into more days. And then it said not weeks. And then Trump said, well, there's more days, and then he said, all right, well, a couple of weeks. Well, now that couple of weeks has passed too. And so here we are back again at talking about what he should do. And let me just ask you, just right off the top, Gary, what did you think? Because it struck me as a little odd when he said, yeah, it's like two kids fighting and they just have to fight it out sometimes. What does that imply to you?
I thought it was also remarkable that he actually said that to Putin on their phone call. He goes, you two, it's like your two children on a playground fighting it out. So for him to actually just say that to Putin like that, I thought was, I guess that's his style, isn't it? I thought it was remarkable, really, that I think he's maybe even a little bit dumbfounded. It's a place where he doesn't find himself often, or at least if he does, he doesn't tell us about it. And he's found out that his art of the deal isn't what it is, at least in this situation it isn't. It's funny, he's pivoting off this stalemate of negotiations between Ukraine and Russia, talking about how he stopped the war between Pakistan and as if he's still got feathers to put in his cap. So don't think that this is I haven't lost my touch. I've still got the golden touch. But it's so obvious that he's been ruled impotent in this situation.
And yeah, the issue, of course, with the Pakistan-India situation was, they had every incentive in the world to keep this thing from blowing up. And, neither one of them wanted to get into a full-blown war. I'm sure they probably appreciated his help there, but I'm pretty confident they would have figured that out, as they have in previous border clashes before. But Trump wants to claim decisive action on that. What does that tell you about where his mind is on this war?
Oh, again, I think I don't think he has the thoughts. He'd be telling us if he had some good ideas. I think he'd be at least hinting at them. He has no ideas. I think he's come up totally empty. He really thought his charisma would be enough, and whatever other tools he thinks he's got, that he's pulled them out. He's pulled all his tools out. He's shot all his bullets, and here he is. And now he's he's having to eat this pie that's not very tasty to him.
Yeah, he's definitely not. And he's getting pressure from lots of different quarters too, in addition to whatever he may be thinking. And I think that this delay, of course, obviously he talked about how he was going to have this settled in 24 hours and then it was 100 days or whatever. But I think that because all these time zones keep collapsing without any action, that I think that's encouraging others to put more pressure on him. One of whom was in that very room where he made that comment there. We'll take a look at that next, is Friedrich Merz from Germany. Watch this next one.
He got hit. He's been doing hitting, so I understand it. But he got hit hard. And I don't think he's playing games. I think I've always said he wanted the whole thing. I thought he wanted the entire, everything having to do with Ukraine.
Saying that America is again in a very strong position to do something on this war and ending this war. So let's talk about what we can do jointly, and we are ready to do what we can. And you know that we gave support to Ukraine, and that we are looking for more pressure on Russia. The European Union did, and we should talk about that.
We will talk about it. When I see the moment when we're not going to make a deal, when this thing won't stop,
Is there a deadline?
if that moment, yeah, it's in my brain, the deadline. When I see the moment where it's not going to stop, and I'm sure you're going to do the same thing, will be very, very, very tough. And it could be on both countries, to be honest. You know, it takes two to tango. But we're going to be very tough. Whether it's Russia or anybody else, we're going to be very tough. That's a bloodbath that's going on over there.
Okay, that's one of the first times, Gary, that I've ever heard him even suggest that there might be sanctions on both sides. Not just that he might walk, but that he might sanction both sides. What'd you make of that?
Well, I thought, we've all said, I mean, we so often, everyone in our audience says, why doesn't he just completely pull out Trump? If, talk about a sanction, just stop, not funding them, but, sending them any ammunition, anything, and, put a kibosh on them, even suggesting that Elon turn off Starlink. You really want to stop this war, completely disable them. And he's never wanted to go that far. So, yeah, I think he, just for political purposes, he toys with the idea publicly, but really he's not really willing to pull the plug the way he needs to.
So let me ask you, Trump he's both famous and infamous in terms of it's almost simultaneously. He's got a really thick skin that he doesn't care what people say, but he also has kind of a thin skin that he does care about what some other people say. When it comes to the act of walking away from this, obviously that's going to Russia already has all the advantages that we point out all the time. But if Trump actually walks out too, then the psychological damage, the impact on the Ukraine side would be massive. And so many people would be saying, you abandoned them. You lost this war. How do you think that impacts on his decision to whether to do this?
Yeah, I think, we know that, listen, he likes to have friends and he likes to be liked, right? He loves adulation. And if he has to do without it, it's something to be avoided at all costs, for him, So I think he sometimes will take a stand of sorts and, make an enemy here and there. But listen, I think that's the other part that's maybe good about him is that he doesn't seem to want to hold an enemy as an enemy, and he's willing to make friends and kiss and make up too. So that is another aspect where he's done that over the course of his entire career. But yeah, that's one of his faults also, that his hunger for adulation, it's a real Achilles heel for him.
Because I mean, man, I want him to just recognize that there's no solution to this from his perspective. I'm talking about, not even the war itself. That it's not entering in yet, Danny. I mean, you'd think that's kind of what I saw there. For him to say, "Well, I guess we're going to have to let him fight for a while." Well, yeah, finally. So you can't pull it off. Is that what you're saying, Mr. Trump? Yeah, indirectly, I think that is what I mean. Yeah, because he's been trying to get them to end it from the beginning. He's so many times he's used this strong language about 5,000 people a week are dying, these bodies everywhere. A couple of times he just said, I think it was just yesterday, where he was being very graphic. He said, there's I see bodies without heads and arms and legs and stuff. Yeah. So he's been shown some pretty graphic stuff, but he hasn't been able to bring it to end. And honestly, golly, this is where I just say I want him to bow up a little bit and say, look, recognize there's no solution here. There's no course of action that Trump can take that's not going to have one group of people hating him, one group of people loving him, period, no matter which way you go. So just say, all right, I'm going to take what has a chance to succeed and go down this path and say, we're going to walk. because right now he's not doing either, and he's getting a lot of hate from all the sides. So it seems that this is a losing deal.
Danny, who do you think's on that side in his inner circle there that is maybe even encouraging them? Yes, come on, it's time to walk away. It's time to. Do you think there's anybody in his inner circle? Tulsi? Anybody? I don't want to get personal. I couldn't say Tulsi, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Who do you think might be on that side and making that argument?
I mean, I like to think Tulsi is the one making that argument. I mean, I know from some of my conversations with her in the past, I know that's where she was anyway. I don't have any active access with her anymore, but the last time I did, she was there. So, I mean, the New York Times suggested about 2 months ago, I guess, that she was instrumental in getting Trump to not greenlight an attack on Iran because she pointed out all the bad things about it. So it seems like she would be in that case as well. I also have some insider knowledge that at least a few months ago that there were voices in the intelligence community that were saying these things and that were pointing out the disparity in the balance of power and how this can only end one way. So, but who that is right now, I don't have any idea actually.
Yeah, it's funny, and there isn't anybody publicly saying it. I mean, the times that Rubio said it, right? He was saying it. I don't know if Wickoff said it, but Rubio definitely said that the time is coming where we will walk away. But he was just merely taking the directive. I don't know if there's, and I'm curious if anybody with any enthusiasm is making that argument for him around him.
Yeah, I guess we'll find out. But so we don't know for sure who's on our side of this, talking on the inside, but we do have a pretty good idea who's on the other side, trying to get him to go in the direction of Chancellor Merz and Starmer and all those, and that's his good golfing buddy, Lindsey Graham.
I see nothing about the meeting on Monday in Istanbul to give me any hope at all that Russia is interested in peace. So when this 2-week period is over, I think it'll be pretty clear to everybody Russia is playing a game at the expense of the world, not just the United States. We're going to change that game for Russia. The game that Putin's been playing is about to change. He's going to be hit and hit hard by the United States when it comes to sanctions. China, the game you're playing with Russia is about to change. If you keep buying cheap Russian oil to fuel Putin's war machine, there will be a 500% tariff on all of your products coming into the United States.
Yeah. So, and by the way, I saw a comment from Merz this morning. Actually, he's still in Washington as of this morning. And he was like, yeah, I told President Trump yesterday, he said, it was good. We had a good conversation, but I reiterated, we need to support Ukraine. We need to put pressure on Russia, et cetera. And obviously that's singing from the songbook of Lindsey Graham here. So
Dan, don't you think that, with these last exchanges on Monday with Ukraine's drone strikes and now last night with Russian strikes, aren't they making Lindsey's argument for him?
In what terms? I'm sorry.
Oh, that Trump needs to put these sanctions on. Look at these guys; they're getting out of hand. They're amping it up. The war's not even they're not even close to sitting down and agreeing on anything. So we've got to, just like Zelensky keeps calling for more pressure, and thinking the pressure will drive Putin to the table.
Yeah, and that's the part where I think somebody made a comment on our show here a second ago. You can't stop the Ukraine gravy train, whatever. I fear that the Grahams and the Merzes and the Macrons and Starmers, et cetera, that they don't actually think that the sanctions are going to work. They just know that it will, or they perceive rather that it will help some other segment of some economic deal that's from their perspective. Because I mean, they have, Gary, like 3.5 years of direct evidence that sanctions hurt us more than it hurts Russia, and they've almost made themselves sanctions proof. So I remain puzzled as to why. And do you have any theories? I mean, whether it's Graham or Merz or any of these other guys, why do they think that sanctions are going to do something? So why do they push so hard for them?
I agree. I mean, they're banging their head against the wall with sanctions. Again, like you said, is it the 17th? I forget what the number is of sanctions.
17 so far, yeah.
Yeah. It's like, to take the hint, but they don't seem to take the hint. And, it just seems like a useless effort. Although it certainly sounds good. It's tough talking, and say so authoritatively like this is it's like give them. It's like the more bombs that they have, finally just a little bit more bombs will do it. Well, just a little bit more sanctions is going to do it. It's always that hope. That it's the carrot on the stick for them.
Yeah, maybe it's that they're saying, hey, you know what, we got to do this because we got to do something, and we don't have any more sticks. So let's try this one, even though there's no because then at least they look like they're doing something. They look good on camera. They look tough on camera. Exactly. They're trying to put that old Russian bear in its place. But the contradiction or the contrast rather between this big success of Ukraine, whatever, I think it was June the 1st, where they hit the bomber fleet and all that, the trains that got knocked out, etc., and how big Zelensky was beating his chest and talking about how great it was, and then against what Russia did just last night. And maybe if you can show some of that video that we showed earlier today, when you see the one night impact on the war that the Ukraine side had against Russia, knocking out some of the bomber fleet, and then what Russia did yesterday, striking throughout the country of Ukraine, hitting huge targets all over the place. I mean, that really tells you what you need to know, that the Russian side was able to handle most of the drones that came in. 2 of the targets got hit in the base, but then you see almost everything from the Russian side did get through. And there has been some really, really big ones hits overnight. As you can see, this is Kiev, what's on the screen right now. And you can see if you look up in the sky, you can see a couple of attempts to knock down missiles. They're not working. They're getting through. And it's just plain self-evident that they can do that. And so actually, if you look at one of those other ones, Gary, if you can pull that the one that has the black and white image up there, you can see.
Oh, sure. Yeah, give me a minute.
Yeah, you can see that some of them weren't getting. Even the air defense system itself was hit. So not only did the missiles not hit, and what we'll pull up in a second here, you'll see a black and white image where you see air defense systems that are going up and trying to knock down some of these incoming Iskander and some of the other missiles that were coming in from the Russians, the cruise missiles. And you see they missed, first of all, but then because they missed, then you saw, those are the ones that are going up. I think you'll see a series of 4 in a row that are going up. And I think it's about 12, 13 seconds later that these obviously didn't hit the incoming missiles that they were looking for, because
now here's the 14-second.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Maybe you can even speed through that a little bit.
Just in a second, you'll see about 3 seconds or so, you'll see the incoming.
Yeah. And there it is. There she wrote, and bam. And then there goes.
So you were saying that the Patriot system had shot out the defensive missiles, and they had to shoot off a handful of them. We saw 5 of them. There might even have been more.
Yeah.
None of them were able to hit.
Shot. Right.
And none of them were able to hit that one incoming missile.
Gary, can you pull up that tweet from Shea Bose that we were going to talk with him about, because he has an assessment of exactly what got through, what was hit, what wasn't hit. I thought it was really fascinating.
Let me grab that.
He has a lot of different sources in here, but I thought that it was really, really noteworthy, because there was, I think the total number, that at least what was reported, was there were 407 total air attacks against Ukraine overnight. A combination of Garand drones and then several classes of missiles. And at least what was reported on Ukrainian media is that about 200 of the drones were knocked down, and somewhere like 40-something% of those got through. But Che was just looking here just at the missiles, and you see, he said there were 10 Iskander-M missiles that were launched, none intercepted. 13 caliber cruise missiles launched, 2 intercepted. 4 KH-101 cruise missiles, 1 intercepted. 1 KH-3P launched, not intercepted. Total 27 missiles launched, 3 intercepted. So that's a 10% rate, and somewhere around a 55 or 60% rate on the drones, which is a horrible percentage, because the drones
are one hell of a ratio. Wow. Yeah. That
Oh,
is
yeah, it's huge.
crazy.
And of course, those cruise missiles are pinpoint accurate. So whatever they were shooting at, they hit. We saw those that one especially that it was really noteworthy in I believe it was Ternopil or may have been Irkutsk, which I can't remember one of the shows where you don't see anything at all, and they 4 missiles in a row just cram right straight on target. And hit exactly what they were shooting for. So these missile impacts, especially the missiles, have devastating
This is what you're
consequences.
talking about,
Yeah,
Dan.
that's the one. Right. Yeah, you can see.
So there's
And,
number one.
It's
You
Lutz.
said like
Yeah.
4 of them come in a row, right? There's one. Here comes number 2. I looped this so you can just see, because you see the incoming missile. This is the same one. I just looped it 4 times. You see the missile coming in. So that was 2, and then here come 2 more. There it comes,
Man.
boom.
And then you'll see in the distance there behind that a 4th one. And you don't even see any attempt to air defense, at least nothing on this screen
Yeah,
right
there's
here.
nothing. There's nothing going up there.
And this is one of the first times
This
is one of the first times that Lutsk has even been attacked. So I think they kind of thought they were safe. Turns out they weren't. And now then, all of these things it was some kind of factory, war-making factory, and now then all that capability has been knocked out. Apparently there was also the subway system, the communication systems, transport systems in Kiev were knocked out. More war-making capacity, more energy systems again that were knocked out, things that are needed to power their energy supplies, power their other factories so they can keep running, et cetera. So that's why I say you look at the contrast between what Ukraine did. It was an embarrassment to Russia. It showed that they were not invulnerable deep inside, yay, if you're a Ukraine side. But then it had no impact on Russia's ability to launch the very airstrikes which happened overnight. And they did get through and cause tremendous impact, which will have an impact on the frontline fighting. That's what people need to understand. And Gary, I think that you and I talked before that, a lot of people were talking about, well, what is Putin going to do? Because he was really angry in his comments and what he had talked about after this attacks, especially the ones on the civilian trains, et cetera. And that the idea was that, well, they must be going to do something big this time, going to hit some kind of big strategic target. And you and I talked this morning that, well, this was big, but it didn't seem to match the anger. And one wonders if this is just like round one, and maybe they're going to have more of these coming in the coming nights at this level of this high. And if they do, Gary, if you were already low on air defense missiles and now another battery's knocked out, what's that going to tell you about what's coming?
Yeah, no kidding. I was reading Larry's blog, Larry Johnson's blog that he has on cylinder21.com, and he reminded us that how the Russian attitude is somewhat like the mafias, where they say retaliation is best served up when it's cold. And that's why Larry was saying, yeah, I don't think, this is a pretty good hit that they had, but he didn't anticipate or didn't interpret this hit that we saw last night as being part of really what he thinks is to come.
And yeah, and that, I think a lot of people, I was one of them, thought that because it was a strategic target hit in Russia, that there would be a strategic target hit on the Ukraine side, which I thought may have been some of the power ministries, which to date, I think, other than, one strike on an SBU building a year or so ago, there's been virtually nothing on any of the power ministries inside Kiev, like the Rada, like the presidential palace, et cetera. And one wonders if at some point that's going to be on the target list, because obviously there's very little that Ukraine can do to intercept those.
Yeah, boy, they're showing their vulnerability quite impressively, unfortunately. And you got to wonder what notes that the Russians are taking, seeing the success that they're having as they had last night. And
I think that's
yeah, please.
Yeah, I know. I think that's because and for those who may have missed it, or just to remind you, this is what Putin's talking about now, that it's different. Aside from his anger, which we talked about, maybe the most important thing is that he's talking about the Zelensky government like it's a terrorist regime.
It was a deliberate strike, and it only confirms our suspicions that the illegitimate regime in Kiev that came to power through a coup is now being reborn as a terrorist organization, and its sponsors become supporters of terrorism. Recently, the Ukrainian government and their allies dreamt of inflicting a strategic defeat on Russia on the battlefield. Now they're withdrawing from the battle zone, fleeing, and now the Kiev regime is trying to resort to terrorist attacks. At the same time, they're asking for a ceasefire. They're asking for top-level meetings. But how can we organize such meetings when something like this is happening? What is there to talk about? How can we negotiate with those who are resorting to terrorism? And why should we reward them with a cessation in hostilities, allowing them to receive additional weapons, to continue their mobilization and to prepare for more terrorist attacks like those in the Bryansk and Kursk regions?
So, Dan, I want to if I can just for a second, I want to point out that Larry has written about this, and I wanted to bring this up as he makes a very important point, I think, where he says that the difference that has now happened. Putin has now characterized the military mission as a counterterrorism operation. When the Russian government states that it's threatening Ukraine as a counterterrorism operation, it signifies a strategic shift in rhetoric, tactics, and legal framework, allowing for expanded military and domestic security measures. So it's a totally different situation in Russia now. It's like a new day in a sense. It's no longer simply a military, a small military operation. It's now a counterterrorism operation, which, it's not just playing with words. It has legal ramifications and differences that occur.
And also in light of that, in getting circling back to the issue of what is going to be the Russians, not just retaliation, but next moves. That was President Putin, obviously, we just showed, but then Dmitry Medvedev, director of their Security Council and former president and prime minister, on the same day that Putin made that statement there, he also wrote, to all you who are waiting for retribution, you don't need to worry. This is a normal person's quality. Retribution is inevitable. And remember, our army is actively advancing and will continue to advance. Everything that must explode will certainly explode, and those who must be exterminated will disappear. So two important things here. Number one is that sounds like that what he's talking about, everything that must explode will certainly explode. And it doesn't seem like one night is going to be all he was talking about, because there's probably a lot more to come. So I think that is a note that this is going to be a series, not just a one-off. But then the second one is simultaneously negotiation in Istanbul are needed not for a compromise peace on unrealistic conditions invented by someone, but for our speedy victory and the complete destruction of the neo-Nazi government. That may also be an indicator of where the air power is even going to go, and it may well end up hitting some of the power ministries inside of Kiev. If he says that the destruction of the neo-Nazi government is their objective, then one has to wonder, are some of these Iskander or other cruise missiles, possibly even an Oreshnik, which has a deep underground penetrating capacity, so if anybody's in a bunker or something, it ain't going to help them with that. There could be a lot more to come.
You think they have to, right? They have to make good on what they're saying here.
There's been a lot of comment.
They're not timid. Yeah.
There's been a lot of comment about, why hasn't Russia taken out Zelensky? Some say, well, because he's his own worst enemy and he makes all these bad decisions, which just helps out the Russians, and so they don't want to take him out. But there will come a point, if their objective is put out there by Medvedev and echoed by Putin, talking about this as a terrorist regime, that's not something that you're going to live with. You're not going to have a negotiation leaving them in power. So it does imply that at some point they could be on the target list. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, I was going to say, doesn't it put because it's coming out and stating it so blatantly in black and white, that it must be putting a bigger target on Zelensky's back.
Yeah, or on his front, actually, is the case may be.
Sure.
Yeah. So that's something I want to keep an eye on here. And by the way, in terms of his second part about the ending of the war being brought to an end, there was a Ukrainian colonel who went to Washington a couple of days ago And in Europe, in the Ukraine, well, this is actually AFP media is reporting, and I found this morning. But it was published on the 4th of June. It says, speaking to reporters after briefing U.S. lawmakers, an official Ukrainian Colonel Pavlo Palisa said that Russia has set a goal of seizing by the end of September the entirety of the Donetsk and Luhansk. And there's a significant portion of that still under Ukrainian control. And then he goes on to say, by the end of the year, Russia wants to establish a buffer zone along the Ukraine-Russia border in the north, which is what we're talking about with Sumy and Kharkiv and possibly Chernihiv. The plan for next year. So number one, that tells you that they don't have any expectation. This is going to be quick and easy, but it's going to be long, bloody, but conclusive. He says the idea is to occupy the whole part of Ukraine, the situation to the left of the Dnipro River, to include Odessa and Mykolaiv. And that's what we've been talking about and speculating and projecting for probably over a year on this channel here, that's the ultimate objective of the Russian. And if they don't have negotiations, then that's the only thing that's left. And who was it that we had maybe 2 weeks ago? Do you remember? Was it Polyansky? I can't remember. Somebody we had on, or maybe even Medvedev himself. They said this is the last chance for negotiations. If this doesn't work, then the next thing is going to be a military victory. And now everybody's saying it.
Right, yeah.
I think we're past that point. I believe that 12-point plan that they gave Ukraine and Istanbul or earlier this week was a negotiations for surrender. I mean, it was mocked that way by the Ukraine side, but I think that's probably an accurate rendering. They're saying that this is it. This is the last thing we're going to do. You either do what we asked for here, or the next thing is going to be, we'll see at the Dnipro River.
Yeah, Danny, they've been saying that they've been so consistent. They've been so candid. They couldn't be more clear to give the warning signs. Listen. But unfortunately, the West, they're talking past the West. The West doesn't want to hear them at all. Even Trump. You would think our leader would hear it. No, he's having personal conversations with them. He doesn't hear it, right? So nobody is heeding Russia, or if they say they're not worthy of being trustworthy, so we can't trust what they say, even though they repeatedly presented to us, and they've been doing what they said up until now.
Yeah, and I just think it's to the point now, Gary, that we can see the capacity, but some of the criticism is valid in that it has taken 3.5 years to get this far. But now then, I think that we're going to see an escalation in the air campaign, which could have a bigger impact at the front line because of the weakening of the support and the logistics functions. And then we may then see a rapidly deteriorating condition, both on the forward of the north and the eastern fronts. But I think that probably the West is going to have it proved to them that Russia can actually take up to the Dnipro River, that they can actually take all of the Donbass, et cetera. Now, if they do that by September and they take all of the Donbass and drive Ukraine out of those places, maybe then finally somebody's going to say, all right, you know what, let's have a surrender negotiation now, as opposed to just having more people killed and having them physically take everything. Whether Russia would be willing to have a negotiated settlement at that time remains to be seen. But I think that's where we're heading.
Do you think at that point in time, you think they would do that?
Nobody can say. I mean, I can't get.
Oh, I know.
I can. On the one hand, I can even hope that the Western side will come to that realization and be willing to do that. But even that's uncertain. But I think that the Russian side has just said, yeah, y'all say whatever you want now. We're just going to start doing. I mean, it seems to me it seems to me they're at that point. They're not approaching it, but they're there now.
And then by Putin declaring that it's now a counterterrorism situation, that changes everything, in their eyes.
It certainly appears that way. Well, listen, we're going to keep monitoring this for you guys, and if there's any additional strikes overnight or so, we'll cover that. Especially if there's anything big, folks, just watch it. Come straight to this channel, because we will break into any kind of program. It could be in the middle of a Saturday night, so Sunday morning, whatever. If something big of strategic value is hit in Kiev, come straight here, because we will be covering it for you. But in the meantime, for Gary and I, we appreciate you guys coming on our show and watching this, and remain unintimidated and uncompromised to bring you the truth that you need, because that's what we're all about. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next time on Daniel Davis Deep Dive.